This is awesome. Figured out a trick. All right, new day, weekend, working on the Raptor again. We are a couple weeks away from this thing getting picked up and head to Mexico. So we've got a laundry list of stuff to do still. Front bumper done. All the lights work, the adaptive cruise works, the sensors work. It just works. Today's agenda is to get the suspension buttoned up. I need to go through everything front to back, make sure everything's torqued, mark every bolt, all that fun jazz. The main problem we are having is there are Heim joints at the top now with jam nuts. Well, in order to set the alignment, you've got to pull this all apart, adjust these in and out, put it all back together, check the alignment, and if it's not good, pull it back apart, adjust it a little bit, put it back together. So these things are set up right now where they need to be. In the last run, we had these jam nuts walk out, and there's just not enough space to get anything in here to torque them down. So I need to pull those off, Loctite the jam nuts, crank them down on the bench, and then put them back in. That way they are for sure torqued down. So this has a RPG full tie rod kit. So it's Heim outer, Heim inner, and it's just a solid piece of aluminum straight across. Awesome kit. The group that is running out in Baja have seen a lot of issues where the tie rods are strong, the rack is a weak link. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna swap these full rods out for half rods. It'll have a stock inner tie rod and an aluminum, little stubby aluminum outer with a Heim, and that will take the stress off the steering rack, so hopefully you won't have any steering rack issues down in Mexico. So that's a problem they've had in the past on these runs, so we're just going to try to avoid it with this truck. There is no issue with that tie rod kit, but the rack is not the strongest compared to the tie rod, so we're hoping to have the lockout plates in. I did not receive those yet. Would have been nice to have them because I could have pulled the lower out and welded those things solid, but we might just have to make it work without. Not a big deal. And then I just got to go through the back end on this thing and make sure that it's all buttoned up. The back is done. I just need to torque it all down and mark it all. We got to put a Tesla antenna up in there. Auxiliary battery for the Starlink and the ARB fridge. Oh, I mounted a fridge. Almost forgot about that. Got an ARB fridge for all his fridge needs. I made a little tray for it. The tray bolts to the factory holes on the seat brackets, and then there are two studs on the floor that hold that factory cargo tray system in. It can be easily removed when he's not using it, so that was the goal. But still got a lot of stuff left to do. But today, it's suspension day. That's the goal for today. And then next week and next weekend, I can get all the wiring buttoned up and he'll be ready to rock and roll. And I'll be excited because this was a long, tedious project, making sure that this thing isn't going to fall apart in Mexico. So, but we'll get after it and see if we can't get this done. Okay, we got the tire off. We are going to work on getting this upper control arm off. Well, if it was that easy, it might actually be that easy. There's a lot more room than I thought. I might be able to get a wrench in there and possibly slide that bolt straight back without pulling this off. We're gonna give that a shot. But in the off chance that that doesn't work, to get this upper control arm off, we're gonna have to pull this tie rod off, which we got to pull and replace anyway, and then we'd have to pull the coilover out, and then you can get the arm off. But it actually looks like this one you can get a wrench to right to the head of the bolt right there, and if that one slides back, there's plenty of room for this one to slide back. I might be able to get these ones off, and that would be awesome. That saves me a lot of time, and getting to the top of the coilover on the other side is a nightmare. So thanks, Ford, for that. We're gonna get it tore apart, we're gonna get it tightened up, and we're gonna get it put back together. this is awesome. Figured out a trick. I got the control arm out without having to take this off. I had to take a few things apart. Got the CV axle popped out just so I didn't overextend it. I got this little bad boy out of here. And the trick was I just had to loosen the top hat on this coilover, because what was happening was the bolts were just hitting the top of the collar. So I was able to loosen this up, take the CV axle off, push this coilover down a little bit, bolt slid right out. Is it going to be fun to put that back in? Not at all. But the coilover is not fun to put back in. It is heavy and awkward, and I just was going to try to avoid it. So it likes where it is right now, and I like where it is right now. So we like that we don't have to take it off. You'll do. Anyway, got the upper control arm out without having to take this off, which was a big plus. Just had to loosen the top hat on it, push it down a little bit so the bolts could clear the adjustment collar, and they slid right out. If you have a Gen 3 or Gen 2 Raptor with the electronically valved, the live valve from Fox, make sure you take this off, because if this is dangling on it when you go to take it off, it is not fun. Not fun at all trying to get that off while you're holding on to a control arm. So we are going to loosen these jam nuts right here, put some Loctite in them, and crank these things down. Oh, look at that. Perfect example. It just came loose by hand. Can't get anything in there to torque these things down good enough. And I was worried this was going to happen, and I'm so glad I took this apart. I'm going to only Loctite the jam nut. I am not going to Loctite the threads into here. This is aluminum. There's anti-seize in here. Otherwise, these things will bind up, and these really expensive control arms turn into really not expensive control arms when you can't adjust them. We're going to tighten these control arms up, get these things all set up. We'll take these tie rods off, these full tie rods. We'll take these off, measure them, set up the half tie rods on the bench. I'll show you guys what I'm going to do with all that. We'll get the half tie rods on this side, button it up, torque everything down, possibly move this backing up or angle it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not good right there. So we're going to do all that on this side, do the same thing on the other side, torque the rear, and the suspension will be done. And that is a big ticket off the list. So we'll get all that situated and we'll go from there. Got the control arms. I end up pulling all the heims out, cleaning them out, put new anti-seize in the threads, and then Loctited the jam nut on both sides. And then I cranked these jam nuts down as tight as possible. They're all tight, ready to go back on the truck. I'm going to throw this one on there, and then I'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, driver's side suspension is in, done, and tight. The only thing I haven't done is the tie rods because I'm switching those out, but I'm going to move to this. We're going to try to get this relocated up to where this part of the reservoir is above the skid plate, so that way he doesn't bash it. So I think I can actually shift it, like angle it back to where this just clears this body mount, because that's going to be the problem right there. So we're going to try to see what we can do with this. Got one side mount, or one reservoir mount done. That is the new spot. It sits the valves, or the solenoid for the valves, sits pretty much level with the front core support mount. So it might stick out a little bit, but the frame is right here. If he hits that, it was gonna happen. There's no getting away from it. So, but this is where it is now. And this is where it was before. Yeah, it's significantly lower. The reservoir mount is the first to hit. This is about 1.5 inches back, and as you can see, I went from here to here with it, and also brought it back to where this is flush with the mount. So I like how this one over here turned out. Just gotta do the other side, and then I will start on the tie rods. Just gonna go over what I did yesterday on this thing. You're gonna have to come down. A little bit. So, move these. They are now higher and further back to where it'll contact the frame better, or it'll contact the frame before it hits this. If you do manage to hit this, he did something wrong, and the front of the truck is in the dirt. The other thing is we switched the full tie rods out for this half tie rod kit. And by half tie rod kit, it means it uses the stock inner tie rod, which is behind this boot. Stock inner tie rod, a little sleeve with basically a jam nut sleeve that overlaps the stock tie rod, and the half tie rod, which is this outer with the Heim joint. This outer is the exact same as the full set. Half tie rod is basically stock inner. This is the stock outer. This just all replaces the stock outer with a better, beefier joint. This is what the full kit looked like. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this actually bolted directly to the rack and pinion. Well, we got rid of this deal, and the stock inner is now there. So apparently, running that full tie rod set moves the weak link, which was the stock tie rod, and moves it further upstream, and actually the weak link is now the factory rack and pinion. And I guess on past Baja trips they were having issues with full tie rod kits causing the rack and pinion to wear out on the trip, and they were having problems with the rack and pinion. So they advised us to switch to a half rod kit, which would take some stress off the factory rack and pinion and put it more or less on this inner tie rod. But they weren't having issues with these kits. They were having issues with the full kits, and then they were having issues with the rack and pinion. So we swapped these out. That way it would take some stress off the factory rack. And we moved the reservoirs up. We went through the entire suspension, and we also made sure that the upper jam nuts on the upper control arms were all nice and solid. So that's pretty much what I did yesterday. Went through everything. So the suspension is now ready for Mexico. What do we got left? Let's look at the list. Yay. We did order some lower control arm pockets. We're gonna wait for those to come in. I would have liked to have them now because I could have pulled the lower control arm, but they didn't come in time, so I'll have to figure that out. If they do show up, I will do those. So that's that deal. We did the half tie rods, keep the full as spares. Those are already adjusted for the alignment. I didn't change the alignment, so if he did break this tie rod, he could throw the full replacements back in and he wouldn't have a problem. Upper control arms are tight. That's done. Suspension has gone through. He didn't even put that on the list, but I'm gonna do that. Suspension. Check. All right, next, let's walk to the back. I hate these electric tailgates. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move the cooler here. It was up in that pocket up there, but he got himself a fancy pants Starlink antenna from old Elon Musk. And so we're gonna mount a Starlink up there. And what we've been seeing is the Starlink actually draws quite a bit of power. So we're actually mounting a secondary battery under the Starlink in that spot up there. And the secondary battery is going to power the Starlink and the ARB fridge that's inside. And that way he can shut the truck off and they will only run off of the rear battery when the truck's off. So that way in the morning he can start the truck and not worry about it draining the truck battery. So we'll run a solenoid that the rear battery will charge when the truck is on, but then the rear battery is disconnected from the truck when it's off. Let me see that real quick. I'm gonna explain this. Battery there, Starlink there, gas cans there, cooler here, right here. And then we're talking about doing a receiver mount for an umbrella, because you gotta bring the patio umbrella apparently when you go to Baja and carry said umbrella, but to each his own. So let's see, we've got 2 weeks left and we've got to mount cooler, mount battery. We can remove jack and jack mount if needed from bed. No, we can't. That's a dumb thing to do. It's not even taking up any space. I'm just crossing that off. No, we're not removing the jack because you need that. I will make a note that that was not on the list. Wire fridge, wire race radio, mount Starlink, wire Starlink, move dump can holder, trash can, weld in lower pockets if they show up, umbrella holder if I feel like it, finish the dash mount, that's his job, not mine, clean out console, his job, not mine, oil change, not my deal, make sure lug nut socket and wrench is in the truck, that's pretty important, make sure we have spare tire rods and a big hex. That's the other problem with those full tie rods, was they're held in with an Allen wrench in the rack and pinion, and those like to come loose. We've actually had that happen a few times at events, and I'm always the one in the mud torquing them down. So I'm kind of glad I'm not gonna have that job. But check all wires and routings, zip ties, etc., and final inspection. So we're getting close to the end of this Raptor build. I think only one more video and we'll be done. Hopefully somebody will get footage of this thing in Mexico, so that would be pretty cool. But that's it for this video. Next video will be all these mounts and stuff. Hopefully that'll be the last one, because that's my last weekend before it gets picked up for transport, so it's gonna have to be done. And then it's on to the next project, which will probably be international, which you guys haven't seen yet. So that'll be a fun project to get started finishing, right?
Get started.
So, and that's it for this one, so we'll see you later.